We're thrilled to have three great farmers from across New York State representing different sectors and cropping systems. They're going to talk about how they prioritize soil health on their farms and what that looks like. So we'll begin by having each of them introduce themselves and give a brief overview of their farms, and then we'll have an informal discussion about what soil health looks like on their farms. And Michael Glos, I'm going to hand it over to Michael Glos, and he's going to moderate this panel.
Great. So we'll get going real quick here. Yeah, I'm really excited to have three farmers here today. We've got a lot of farmers, great farmers in the state, but I'm especially excited to have Dale, Suzanne, and Zaid today. We're going to start with an overview of the of each of their farms, and then we will have just a few questions that we'll have them answer. We could be here all day with them. They have a lot to share, but we'll get as much as we can. So we're going to start with Dale Stein, and he can introduce himself, and we'll just show a few pictures of his farm operation.
Morning. Sorry about my voice. I'm just getting over the flu. Good thing we have webinars available. I'll go through the slides at the end. I'll give you a brief overview of the farm, and then I'll just go over the slides quick. See, I don't see the slides, but I am the senior partner in Stein Farms. We're in Leroy, New York, in business with my brother, my son, my niece, my nephew, and we have two other family members who are working on the farm. We milk 1,000 cows, have about 860 young stock, work roughly 2,400 acres of land, of which 400 acres we are double cropping. All the crops are grown for feed for the animals, corn, alfalfa, triticale, and other small grain forages. We are a member of Dairy Farmers of America, and all our milk goes to the Sorrento cheese plant in Buffalo. We use reduced tillage. We did no-till for a bunch of years, but we found that was prior to doing cover crop, but found that we were slowly building a compaction problem, and the dealing with manure was an issue. So we went back to experimenting with cover crops, and that was 20 years ago. And we do cover cropping now on all the corn silage ground, and we are doing trials on the corn shelling ground so that we try to keep something green growing all winter. We had almost 900 acres in cover crop this fall, of which 400 acres of it was drilled with a 40-foot drill, and then it started to rain. And so we put the other 400 plus acres on with an air seeder to get it covered before we lost the window. The cover crop mix we use is a combination of triticale and rapeseed. We plant 150 pounds of triticale and 2 pounds of rapeseed for the ground that we're going to chop off in the spring as feed. Part of this cover crop program we use is actually to grow feed for the animals in May. And the balance that we are just using as a cover crop for soil health is we use 68 pounds of triticale and 2 pounds of rapeseed. When we're double cropping, which is about 400 acres a year, we're double cropping triticale and then corn silage in right after that. And then on part of it, we're also double cropping triticale and sorghum in. So we got summer crops, and we're doing peas and sorghum. So we get more use of manure, less use of our man-made fertilizers, and we get higher yields, providing you get rain. We had a very bad drought this year, and we did have lower yields. The ground was just too dry, and without water, you don't survive. We are doing trials. This past year, we did a trial with Penn State on interseeding into corn when it's 12 inches tall to grow a mix of cover crop seeds to find what is going to work best for doing in the shelling corn. Being a very drought year, when we combined the corn, you couldn't see any cover crop. But 2 weeks later, because we did have rain, the brassicas in the field was 8 inches tall, and the clover was 2 inches tall. So it was there and it was coming on good. We're going to keep doing trials on the interseeding and corn until we get a mix down that we want to do. And then we'll be doing all 400 acres a year of the shell and corn with a cover crop also. For those that aren't super aware of how farming works, you really can't grow a cover crop after shelling corn. It's too late in November, nothing will germinate and grow. That's why you've got to interseed it early in the season, and you've got to get the right mix to work so it will come on growing in the fall. We are also doing trials with reduced tillage this next year. We're going to run a 1-inch point on a chisel plow on 15-inch centers, 20 feet wide, just to make slots in the soil, and then through the cover crop, and then pass over it once with a speed till and plant. We had to change our method of working the soils. 2 years ago, we went to a 24-row corn planter, 60 feet wide, and we've been adapting things to make that work better. In small fields that are not square, rectangular, the large planter has its drawbacks. But with the amount of acres we cover and trying to get them in quickly, we went to that size. In next year's trial, we want to run more. We want to experiment with some ryegrass, oats, and oats mix. We did some oats this past fall, and I'll explain that in the slides. This slide you're looking at right now is a lot that will be chopped off when they have flag leaf in May. It is triticale and the I get my notes back. It's a triticale and the rapeseed. Next slide. This one is oats. Now, because we were so dry, we decided we had an old seed alfalfa lot that we said, in August, we put manure down on it, worked it all up and planted in a heavy crop of oats. We harvested this crop once in late September, and then it regrew back that. And that picture was taken last Thursday. It's still very green. I didn't think oats would stay green at this when it had been so cold, but it's very thick mat. We're hoping to be able to one pass over it and plant in the spring. Next slide, please. This you can see where the rapeseed is coming up in the triticale. The rapeseed will get pretty good size in the spring. And it's the same way. This one will probably harvest it off in May as a feed for cows, and then we plant right into it if we can. Next slide, please. Close-up view of the rapeseed and the triticale growing together. This was drilled in with a drill. Next slide, please. A picture of the 40-foot drill. Next slide. That's interseeder. It is Genesee County Soil and Water Conservation District has it. It's what we use to do the trials. They loan it out to anybody that wants to try it. We have been keeping it at our farm, and the farmers come to our farm and pick it up. Next slide. Just another view of the interseeder. Next slide. That is a 60-foot air seeder that we use when we got to do cover crop in a hurry because it's getting late. You can cover crop seed on with an air seeder, and I will do 250 acres a day with that machine, but you have to have moisture for it to germinate. 2 years ago when I did it, I did all 750 acres in 3 days in the pouring rain, and the cover crop came up fantastic. It works very good, but you need water. That's all I have. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Dale. Really appreciate it. We'll move on to Suzanne Hunt. Go ahead, Suzanne.
Hi, I'm getting a message that the host has stopped my video, so I'd happily join you by video too if that can get fixed. In the meantime, I can chat about my farm while you pull the slides up as well. I'm part of the Hunt family. We have Hunt Country Vineyards. So we're a vineyard and winery. The farm altogether is about 175 acres. My brother owns the southern end of the farm and runs a composting business there. And then the rest of the farm is about a third hay crops, a third forest, and a third vineyards. Because we are kind of one of those rare parts of agriculture that invites the public to come to the farm almost every day, we have kind of a unique opportunity to help educate our customers about sustainability and things like cover crops and whatnot. I'm not seeing my slides. I don't know if that's just me. So that's kind of a cool aspect of being a farm that invites the public there. If you skip to the next couple of slides, through some slides, I can show you some farm pictures. This is just the view from the tasting room. Messaging around, needing clean air, clean water, and healthy soil in a stable climate. Some of the messaging, so we sort of like gentle edutainment for folks that just come and want to sip wine and have a good time. So that's just a nice little aerial view of the farm. It's long and narrow. It's on the west. We're on the west, northwestern tip of Cuca Lake. So we've done a lot of work to eliminate our fossil fuel use, so we've won awards and been recognized for leadership there. On the soil health front, we've seen soil health is both an adaptation and mitigation strategy. So we have, for a long time only used manures and compost as fertilizer. We don't use any synthetic fertilizers on the farm. One of the challenges with permanent crops versus annuals is getting composts and manures down into the root zone. So whenever we're replacing vines or planting new vines, we'll put a big scoop of compost down in the hole. We've finagled some biochar over the years, trading wine for small batches and whatnot, and making our own. We recently got a Climate Smart Agriculture grant to be able to purchase some biochar and mix it with the compost that we make. And so then we've been spreading it in the vineyards and the hayfields and doing some light disking to incorporate it into the soil. We also round bale hay and use it as mulch. So we'll roll it as we are in this picture in between the rows. So it's been interesting with some of the severe drought we've experienced in the last decade since I moved back to the farm. Some years you could literally see which rows. I think it was 2016 when we didn't get a drop of rain for 7 weeks at our farm in the summer, and you could tell which rows the rows where we ran out of hay and they didn't get mulched because the grass in between the rows was dry and yellow and all the other rows were still green. Just a picture of my brother making compost. It's an oldie goldie. He also does mortality composting as well for dairy farms. We did certify all the vineyards on the southern end of the farm organic. We are struggling with options for weed control. Soil and Water did finally get a mower that has a robotic arm that can go around supposedly each vine and around the post to mow under the rows. It was supposed to come a long time ago and was delayed because it was coming from the Ukraine. So weeds and mildew control, we're starting to use some biologicals that are helping with the mildew. Let's see. So in terms of climate adaptation, we also, with our very temperature sensitive vinifera vines for a number of years, we've been dropping a wire to the ground and tying a cane from every vine to the wire and then covering the vines as best we can with hay to try and keep them just at least slightly above the vine mortality threshold. So we've been experimenting with that. And then the hay, in some parts of the world, they use soil to cover the vines, but it's so rocky where we are. You can, it tends to be a lot of effort, a lot of wear and tear on equipment, and then the rocks will damage the vines. So hay has been our strategy, and then it becomes mulch and adds to the soil organic matter. Let's see. And then that's probably enough just to seed the conversation, no pun intended. I can leave it there.
Great. So great to see, much different farm than Dale's, going from a crop farm to a winery. And now we'll move on to Zaid's farm in the Norwich area of New York State, which is organic vegetable farm. Zaid, let's see if we can hear you and see you. Go ahead.
Do you hear me now? Do you hear me?
Sure can.
All right. Good morning, everybody. So Zaid from Norwich, New York, where we experienced -2 Fahrenheit this morning. My phone said it would be 13 degrees. So we're scrambling a little bit today. Our farm is a 230-acre farm, and it's spread over multiple fields. Our largest field is 80 acres. And so we have to travel approximately 10 miles from our main farm to our satellite farms. We used to have a farm in New Jersey a few years ago, but we got rid of that for mostly because there was water issues over there. We farm, of the 230 acres, we probably have around 175 to 185 acres in cultivation. Out of that, we have 215 high tunnels, which is about 21 to 22 acres of high tunnels. And our customer base is fairly diverse, about 500 to 600 CSA members per year, 11 farmers markets, a whole bunch of restaurants, and we do some wholesale as well. We've been at it since a little over 24 years now. And the whole issue of soil health, obviously from day one, was on my mind. The problem with trying to do the right thing is, when we started out, we didn't have the cash, we didn't have the land. And so we did dabble in various cover crops here and there. But it's only been the last few years where we have really paid much closer attention to our soil health. And some of it has to do with basically the way we fertilize. Some of the fields that we've used for approximately 24 years, we're starting to get a little high in pH and a little high in other things. So we started paying much more attention to what's happening with the soil and the plants by doing, we do around 150 to 200 soil tests per year. So we down to the level of a high tunnel. We also do plant testing, leaf testing, to see how the nutrients are being transferred into the plants. Our I guess soil health for us is a constant evolution. This year, finally, after a little bit of yelling and screaming at my staff, as well as the effects of climate change, we were able to get rye in. As the gentleman mentioned, it's very difficult to get a cover crop going after November, or in our case, even October. We're a zone 5A roughly. So we got about 50 acres, which is about 28% of our open fields into cover crops. Our high tunnels, that's a different story. We look at doing rotations in there that include things like fava beans and a lot of beans as sort of our cover crop scheme for the high tunnels. Will I ever do a say rye or something else in a high tunnel? We'll see. Next year, I'm going to try to do, if we have the time. We're very intense in what we do, so the land during the season doesn't remain open for very long. So we could literally till up one crop and then a week later have another crop. So that's not enough time. But there are opportunities in some high tunnels and even in the open field to do things like buckwheat for, say, 3-4 weeks, which would help. The other way we've been trying to, mycorrhiza, adding amendments, if you will, to our soil because the tillage regime on our farm, even though we try to practice the least amount of tillage possible, it really is very difficult in a vegetable situation. Our primary tillage is mostly, we don't, a plow. We'll use a plow if we're turning sod over, but other than that, a chisel plow is what we use, and then cultivators. And we try to minimize that as much as possible, but nonetheless, it is vegetable. We do use rototillers on occasion. So adding mycorrhiza, sometimes in the high tunnels, they dry out. And if they dry out severely, that can impact, what's living in the soil. So there's multiple strategies, and I've hired another farm manager to help me improve what we do and to look at things much closer. We've had a USDA grant that's it's really more of a marketing grant, but the marketing is going to be around attributes such as regenerative or soil health. And because of that, that's making us really focus and take a really hard look at what is it that we're doing to our soils, and how can we keep our soils as healthy as possible. And I'll leave it at that, and I'm hoping for a whole bunch of questions.
Great, Zaid. I'll just cycle here I had a few pictures of your farm that I'll just cycle here quick. I've known Zaid for years. Lives only about half an hour from our own farm, and watched him go from just a few acres to many more fairly quickly over the years, and have been excited to watch his growth and changes in his farm. It produces a huge amount of vegetables and a huge diversity of great crops. I'm going to just stop sharing here. And I've got a few questions. Many of them actually were already answered. It had to do with some of the new things that you guys are doing on your farms, how you're dealing with climate resiliency. Zaid, you talked a little about sort of marketing of soil health and letting people know. Maybe you could mention a little more about that, and then I'll ask the two other panelists how they manage their soil with their customers, or even with their neighbors, or to help advertise or to get their message out about how they're farming and how they're managing their soil. So you can start that, Zaid.
Sure. So we are working with Joseph, who happens to be here, on basically how do we quantify and present our soil health. And so where we're at now is there's the PASA model plus the model that Joseph has, and we're going to use that in a software package, or in some means of presenting it, whether it's our website or actually Fellow Farmer, to present sort of, and to the consumer, we're going to present it in a rather simple manner. And so that's why I think we chose the PASA way of soil health, so we don't really bore the consumer with the scientific details. What we're doing, I mean, it's very comprehensive in terms of what we're doing in that regard. It's, obviously soil health and plant health is key to production, and our farm focuses very much on production, but it focuses even more on marketing. So the idea is not just soil health. I mean, we're going to talk about many attributes of the farm and why we do what we do. The grant we're 1 year into the grant. And so we're at the stage now where we're actually engaging a professional to help us figure out how to reach the consumer new consumers, because our present consumers pretty much sort of believe in what we do. So we're looking for newer consumers. And so how do we reach those people? What are they interested in? Our research so far, shows that people are certainly interested in soil health, but they're more interested in their health. So we have to come up with a story tying soil health to their health, and as well as other parameters that we're looking at talking about.
Great, thanks, Zaid. Dale, I know you probably don't direct market your products straight to the consumer, but are there ways that you convey how you farm to the public?
Not for many years. We ran an article every week in our local penny saver on what we were doing on the farm. And it got to the point where everybody wanted to have the penny saver just to find out what we were doing. And it covered a lot of this, all these subjects we covered. And I also spoke every year at the Western New York Soil Health Group in the early formative years of it on what we were doing with cover crops and the benefits we were seeing to try to get more farmers to participate. And it is now. There's a lot more cover crops grown now in our area than there ever was. There are a neighbor who had never done it. And finally this fall did all cover cropping on his land. And hopefully he's going to be able to see the benefits. But it's being not directly tied to the consumer, it's more difficult for us to do that.
Great. And Suzanne, you have a tasting room, you said, so you probably have sort of direct access to people to sort of get your message across.
Yeah, although similar to Zaid, it's a bit discouraging how small the number of customers are who there's a lot of folks that give lip service to sustainability, but when it comes to wine purchasing decisions, it's not generally a huge factor. And so we tend to have to do it like we'll host events, we'll host biochar, biochar making workshops and things. And so we'll reach out and try to pull in the folks that are interested in these things, and then like help educate that community. And then with folks who aren't necessarily interested, we try to kind of gently do it through talking about it in different ways, putting it on the website, making it part of kind of the introduction when they come in. But it's such a quick interaction, you don't necessarily get into that level of detail. Usually we do something high level about sustainability, and for the folks that are interested, then we can go deeper. I think in terms of being able to reach customers more kind of out in the world when they're shopping for a wine, and we've been involved in helping get a sustainability certification created for New York State wines. It's just going to roll out in the coming years. That does include some soil health elements. We're a member of the International Wineries for Climate Action, and interestingly, they don't give us much credit for our soil health practices, so I'm going to have to push on that. Doesn't fit in the accounting very well yet, from what I can tell. And yeah, and then anytime we can do, webinars, write articles, that kind of thing, we can reach people where they are.
Great. Exciting. And are there, a lot of you talked about sort of innovative things you're doing on your farm. Is there additional support that you need, whether it's funding, whether it's learning about new inputs, or extension support, things that you're not getting that would really help you in improving your soil health? I mean, some of you mentioned there were financial constraints for sure. So if one of you wanted to answer that, just go ahead.
I mean, in my case, Michael, I mean, even attending this half an hour is a bit, we're very busy all the time year round. And so one of the things that I'm hoping is that, you definitely value extension and value research, but how can you get it to us? I can't, a lot of things I'll do at night, or it's very difficult for me to go around and attend anything anywhere. And I rarely do that. Like the Zoom thing has been a bit of a godsend in some ways, and that it allows you to participate without going anywhere. But that, you know, how do you get us the information, you know, and distill information, I would say, even being, because I look for information all over the world and try to adopt techniques from wherever. And so however you can help us find information that we may be able to adopt would certainly help me and help other farmers that I know that are in sort of in our shoes.
I mean, I would, so in my other, I have a whole other job working on policy issues related to sustainability, and from with both of my farmer hat and my policy hat. And what we really need is for the farm bill that's up for renewal right now to be rewritten, so that instead of, you know, our tax dollars going to pay for commodity support programs, we should be paying for ecosystem services provisions, so that it's more affordable to implement all of these soil health practices and less affordable to buy, you know, to do to continue to implement systems that are degrading of soils and bad for the climate. And that would be my big, wish, top ticket item on my wish list, because it's just it's the macro environment that we're in that makes it tough. And then there's lots of things. I mean, that actually, you know, and then that whole system boils down to, you know, what gets researched and how much resource goes to the R&D around these soil health practices versus more conventional systems. So I would also wish for more R&D focus and resources around making these systems more possible, especially for permanent crops, being my own. Not to crack. Sorry, Zaid.
I'm sorry, a quick other thing, Michael. So another thing that just happened in the last couple of years is we're working with a resort in the Hudson Valley where we helped them establish a farm on this resort where we're going to be doing a lot of education. One of the benefits of me marketing to a lot of the chefs in New York City is that we have the ear of the chefs, and we can get information about agriculture out there to an audience that normally doesn't necessarily that it's hard to reach in a conventional manner. So that I will be spending a lot of time on, but I certainly need, you know, the feed of some kind. You know, I'm no expert on a lot of things. So that's been in the making. They just opened, and the most liked element of this resort has been the farm and everything related to the farm. And so, I mean, there's opportunities, and I think we all, as agriculturalists, we all need to seek those type of opportunities. And definitely the people coming to this resort are not they're not my typical customer, and they're not the typical customer. And a lot of these people are very well-to-do, so they're probably connected, so they could probably get some policy things, you know, they talk to the right people that could impact policy.
Great. Dale, you said you took advantage of, you were able to borrow an interseeder. Are there any other programs you've taken advantage of or that you need to help with the practices on your farm?
Well, the work that one of the researchers talked about growing new varieties of plants in order to make better cover crops. We need that research done because it's difficult for us to do research. We do a little bit every year working with the universities and others, but it's we don't have a lot of time, as the other speakers talked to, that if fine-tuned varieties of annual ryegrass and things like that can be done better so that we can pick and choose, like you would a corn variety, on what we want for that specific year, that it would help us a lot. And it would be in all the different cover crop varieties, because we want to go more to mixes more, where we may be planting 5-6 different cover crop varieties instead of just 1 or 2.
Great. I feel like we're just getting going. That said, we really have reached the end of our time. If people have some questions, they can put in the chat. We will have more time to do some interaction at the roundtables from 1 to 2. That meeting link will be sent around, and Joseph will explain that. And then we can really get into some more of these details and more input and hearing from from other farmers and all different parts of the different sectors. So I'd like to thank all three of you for taking time out of your, I know, very busy schedules. And yeah, Zaid, I saw the thermometer this morning and was not expecting that. So it's the weather always keeps you jumping. So great. Thank you so much.